On a Thursday afternoon in July of 1975, Ray Hollister was underneath a John Deere 4020 draining the oil when Dale Vincent's shoes appeared beside the creeper. "Hollister, my office now." Ray slid out from under the tractor, wiping his hands on a rag. Dale was already walking away, not waiting for a response. That wasn't unusual. Dale Vincent didn't wait for anyone. He was the service manager at Henderson Farm Equipment, the biggest John Deere dealership in southeast Nebraska, and he ran the service department like a small private kingdom where he made the rules and everyone else followed them. Ray followed him to the glass-walled office at the back of the service bay. Dale closed the door, which was unusual. Most conversations happened with the door open, voices competing with the sound of air wrenches and diesel engines. "Close the blinds," Dale said. Ray closed the blinds. Now he knew something was wrong. Dale sat behind his desk, straightened some papers that didn't need straightening, and looked at Ray with an expression that was trying to be casual and not quite making it. "That 4020 you're working on, the Pearson trade-in, what about it? I need you to do something for me, for the dealership." Ray waited. "The farmer, Pearson, he's trading it in on a new 4440. We agreed on a trade-in value of $8,000. He thinks that's fair, we think that's fair, everybody's happy." "Okay. Here's the thing," Dale leaned forward. "That 4020 is cherry. I looked it over myself. Pearson maintained it like it was made of gold, new rings, new bearings, fresh paint. We could resell it for $12,000 easy, maybe $13,000 to the right buyer." "So you're making good money on the deal. What's the problem?" Dale's expression flickered. "The problem is we could make better money if the tractor was worth less when Pearson traded it in." Ray felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What are you asking me to do, Dale?" "Nothing complicated. Drain the oil, run it for 10 minutes, maybe 15, engine seizes. We call Pearson, tell him the tractor came in with a problem he didn't disclose. Knock $3,000 off his trade-in value. He can't prove anything. He already signed the paperwork." The service bay was suddenly very quiet. Ray could hear his own breathing, the distant sound of a radio playing country music, the tick of a clock on Dale's wall. "You want me to sabotage a farmer's tractor," Ray said, "a tractor he maintained perfectly, so you can cheat him out of $3,000. I want you to do what's good for the dealership. That's your job, Hollister." "My job is to fix tractors, not destroy them." Dale's face hardened. "Your job is what I say it is. I'm the service manager, you're a mechanic. I give orders, you follow them, that's how it works." Ray stood very still, 26 years old, 3 years at this dealership, the best job he'd ever had, good pay, steady work, a future in the equipment business if he played his cards right, all of it sitting in Dale Vincent's hands. "No," Ray said. "Excuse me." "I said no, I'm not going to sabotage that tractor. Walter Pearson is a good man, he farms 600 acres. He's been a customer here for 15 years and he maintained that 4020 like it was his child. I'm not going to destroy his engine so you can pocket $3,000. Dale's face went red. "You think this is about what you will and won't do, you think you get to make that choice." "I think I'm the one with my hands on the wrench, so yeah, I get to make that choice." "Then you're fired." The words hung in the air. Ray had known they were coming, had known from the moment he said no, but hearing them out loud still felt like a punch to the chest. "Get your tools and get out, you're done here, and don't expect a reference if anyone calls asking about Ray Hollister. I'm going to tell them exactly what kind of employee you were." Ray nodded slowly. "What kind was that?" "What?" "The kind who doesn't know how to follow orders, the kind who thinks he's better than the people who sign his paycheck, the kind who doesn't have a future in this business." Dale smiled. It was the ugliest smile Ray had ever seen. "Good luck finding another job, Hollister. Word travels fast in this industry. By the end of the week, every dealership in the state will know your trouble." Ray walked out of the office, collected his toolbox from his station, and left Henderson Farm Equipment without looking back. Behind him, the John Deere 4020 sat in the service bay, engine intact, oil undrained. He had saved the tractor, he had cost himself everything else. Let me tell you about Ray Hollister, because you need to understand the man before you can understand what he did next. Ray was born in 1949 in a small town called Reynolds, about 30 miles from Fairbury. His father had been a mechanic too, worked at the local co-op for 40 years, fixing tractors and combines and anything else farmers brought in. Ray had grown up in that shop, learning to turn a wrench before he learned to ride a bicycle. There are two kinds of mechanics, his father used to say, the kind who fix things and the kind who make things look fixed. The second kind makes more money in the short run, the first kind sleeps better at night. Ray had always been the first kind. He took pride in his work, not just in getting things done but in getting them done right. When a farmer brought him a sick engine, Ray didn't just treat the symptoms, he found the cause, he fixed the actual problem, he charged fair prices for honest work. That reputation had got him hired at Henderson Farm Equipment in 1972. Henderson's was the biggest dealership in the region, and working there was considered a step up, better pay, better equipment, a chance to work on the newest John Deere models. Ray had been proud to be there. But Henderson's had changed in the 3 years since he'd arrived. The old owner, Merle Henderson, had retired in 1973 and sold the business to a group of investors from Omaha. They'd brought in new management, people like Dale Vincent, who cared more about margins than machines, more about profit than reputation. Ray had watched the changes with growing unease, corners being cut, parts replaced unnecessarily, service intervals short to bring farmers back more often. Little corruptions, each one small enough to justify, all of them adding up to something rotten. The 40-20 was just the latest and the worst. Now let me ask you something, what would you have done in Ray's position? You're 26 years old, you have a good job and your boss tells you to do something dishonest. You know that saying no means losing everything. You know that saying yes means betraying everything you believe in. Most people, when they're honest with themselves, admit they would probably follow orders. They would tell themselves it was just one tractor, just one farmer, just one time. They would cash their paycheck and try to forget. Ray Hollister couldn't forget. His father had raised him to be the kind of mechanic who sleeps well at night. That man couldn't sabotage a tractor and ever sleep well again. So he said no, and he paid the price. Let me tell you about the next 6 months, because those were the hardest months of Ray Hollister's life. Dale Vincent made good on his threat. By the end of the first week, every equipment dealership in southeast Nebraska had heard that Ray Hollister was trouble. The story Dale told wasn't quite a lie. He said Ray had been fired for insubordination, for refusing to follow orders, but it was close enough to a lie to destroy Ray's chances. No dealership would hire him. They would call Henderson's for a reference, hear Dale's voice dripping with contempt, and suddenly the position would be filled or on hold or not quite right for your skill set. Ray tried the co-ops. Same story, they all bought equipment from Henderson's and nobody wanted to hire someone Dale Vincent had blacklisted. He tried independent shops. Most were one-man operations barely keeping themselves afloat, no room for another mechanic, even one who would work for cheap. By October of 1975, Ray was doing odd jobs, fixing cars at a gas station, helping a neighbor replace a roof, anything that paid cash. His savings were running out, his apartment was getting harder to afford, and every day he wondered if he'd made the right choice. The worst part was the doubt. Maybe Dale had been right, maybe that's just how business worked, maybe being honest was just another word for being stupid. Then in November, something happened that changed everything. Let me tell you about the letter. Ray was eating dinner alone in his apartment, canned soup, toast, the kind of meal you make when money is tight, when there was a knock at the door. He opened it to find a man in work clothes holding an envelope. You Ray Hollister? Yeah. I'm Jim Pearson, Walter Pearson's son. Ray recognized the name immediately, Walter Pearson, the farmer whose 40-20 he'd refused to sabotage. My dad wanted me to give you this, Jim said. And to tell you something, he found out what happened at Henderson's, what they tried to make you do and what you did instead. Jim's voice was quiet but firm. Dad said to tell you that he's been trading with Henderson's for 15 years, that's over now. He's taking his business to the co-op in Hebron and he's told everyone he knows what kind of operation Dale Vincent is running. How did he find out? One of the other mechanics, guy named Tommy Reese, he was in the bay when you got fired, he heard everything. Ray barely knew Tommy Reese. A quiet kid, barely 20, who'd started at Henderson's a few months before the firing. Ray had not expected anyone to speak up for him, certainly not someone who had their own job to protect. Why would Tommy do that? Because he's decent and because what Dale did was wrong. Jim nodded at the envelope. Open it. Ray opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $500 and a handwritten note. "Mr. Hollister, I heard what you did for me, what you gave up. This doesn't make up for it, but I hope it helps. If you ever need work, come see me. I can't offer you much, but I can offer you honest work with honest people." Walter Pearson. $500, more than a month's wages, from a farmer who owed him nothing except a debt of integrity. Ray looked at Jim, not trusting himself to speak. "My dad's not the only one," Jim said. "There are other farmers, other people who have had bad experiences with Hendersons. People who got overcharged for repairs or sold parts they didn't need or treated like idiots because they didn't know engines. Dale Vincent has made a lot of enemies, he just didn't know it." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe your bad luck isn't permanent. I'm saying there are people who value honesty even when it costs something. I'm saying my dad isn't the only farmer who needs a mechanic he can trust." Ray looked at the check in his hand, then at Jim Pearson's earnest face, then out the window at the Nebraska evening sky. Something was beginning, he didn't know what yet, but something was definitely beginning. Let me tell you about the shop, because that is how Ray Hollister started his comeback. In February of 1976, Ray rented a small garage on the outskirts of Fairbury, a two-bay building with a leaky roof and a heating system that barely worked. He painted a sign himself: "Hollister Repair, honest work, fair prices." Word spread slowly at first. Walter Pearson was his first customer, bringing in an old Ford 8N that needed a new clutch. Ray fixed it for half what Henderson's would have charged, and he fixed it right. Walter told his neighbors told their neighbors. By spring, Ray had more work than he could handle alone. By summer, he'd hired his first employee, a young mechanic named Eddie Cruz, who'd been fired from another dealership for asking too many questions about billing practices. Eddie was hungry, talented, and just as committed to honest work as Ray was. By the end of 1976, Hollister Repair had a reputation. Not a big reputation, not yet, but a solid one. Farmers drove extra miles to bring their equipment to Ray because they knew he wouldn't charge for work that wasn't needed, wouldn't install parts that weren't necessary, wouldn't treat them like marks to be fleeced. And every customer Ray gained was a customer Henderson's lost. Dale Vincent noticed. Henderson's service revenue had dropped 15% since Ray's firing. Not entirely because of Ray's shop, but Ray's shop was part of it. The farmers who'd heard Tommy Reese's story, who'd learned what Dale had tried to do to Walter Pearson, who'd started paying attention to their own invoices and finding mistakes, those farmers were taking their business elsewhere. Dale started telling people that Ray Hollister was a fraud, a bad mechanic, a man who'd been fired for incompetence. The lies might have worked, except that they were lies, and Ray's actual work proved it. Every tractor that ran better after Ray touched it was a rebuttal to everything Dale said. Now let me tell you about the opportunity, because that is what changed everything. In 1980, the farm crisis hit Nebraska like a slow-motion earthquake. Interest rates spiked, commodity prices collapsed, farmers who'd borrowed to expand suddenly couldn't make their payments. The equipment business was devastated. Farmers weren't buying new tractors, they were repairing old ones, nursing them along, hoping to survive until prices recovered. Henderson Farm Equipment felt the squeeze hard. New equipment sales dropped 60%. The investors from Omaha started getting nervous. In 1981, they decided to cut their losses and sell. The dealership went on the market. The asking price was $400,000, a fraction of what it had been worth 5 years earlier, but still a fortune. Ray Hollister didn't have a fortune, but he had 5 years of savings, a growing business, and something the investors didn't know about: relationships. He went to First National Bank of Fairbury, where his father had banked for 40 years. The loan officer was skeptical. Ray was asking for $300,000, a huge sum for a small business owner. But Ray had brought something with him: letters, dozens of them. Signed statements from farmers all over the region, promising to bring their service business to Ray if he bought the dealership, promising to consider him first when they were ready to buy equipment again, promising their loyalty to a man who had earned it over 5 years of honest work. "These aren't contracts," the loan officer said, leafing through the stack. "These are just promises." "That's right," Ray said, "but around here a farmer's promise means something." Every one of those men shook my hand. Every one of them looked me in the eye. "They'll do what they said." The loan officer looked at the letters again, then at Ray. "You're the one who got fired from Henderson's, aren't you, back in '75? Ray felt his stomach tighten. Here it came, the old story, Dale's version. Yes, sir, I got fired for refusing to sabotage a trade-in tractor. The loan officer's eyebrows rose. For refusing to what? The service manager wanted me to drain the oil and seize the engine, make it look like the farmer had brought it in damaged, cheat him out of $3,000 on his trade-in. Ray met the loan officer's eyes. I said no, they fired me, I've been building my own business ever since. The loan officer was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. My father-in-law is Walter Pearson. He told me this story years ago, said you were the most honest mechanic he'd ever met. He picked up his pen. $300,000, $20 year term, let's get the paperwork started. Let me tell you about the day Ray Hollister bought Henderson Farm Equipment. The closing was on March 15th. Ray arrived at the bank early wearing the same suit he'd worn to his father's funeral 3 years earlier. The investors from Omaha sent a lawyer. The paperwork took 2 hours. When it was done, Ray Hollister owned the building, the inventory, the brand name, everything. Henderson Farm Equipment was now Hollister Farm Equipment. The first thing Ray did was drive to the dealership and look at the sign. The second thing he did was walk through the service bay where he'd been fired 7 years earlier. The same concrete floor, the same tool stations, the same glass-walled office where Dale Vincent had ended his career. Dale wasn't there anymore. He'd been let go when the investors started cutting costs in 1980, replaced by a younger, cheaper manager who had lasted about 6 months before quitting. The service department had been running on autopilot ever since, losing customers and money and reputation at the same quiet, steady rate. Ray stood in the office, his office now, his dealership, his second chance. He had a lot of work to do. Now let me pause again and ask you something. If you were Ray Hollister, what would you do about Dale Vincent? Dale was still in Fairbury. He'd bounced around a few months at an auto parts store, a few months at a trucking company, a stretch of unemployment. By 1982, he was working at a gas station on the edge of town, pumping gas and checking oil for minimum wage. The man who destroyed your career is now pumping gas for minimum wage. The man who called you trouble and said you had no future is the one with no future. You could ignore him, you could gloat, you could fill up your tank, let him see your face, let him see who won. What would you do? Let me tell you what Ray did. In April of 1982, Ray pulled his pickup truck into the Sinclair station on Highway 36. A moment later, Dale Vincent walked out of the service bay, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked older than Ray remembered, thinner. His hair had gone gray at the temples. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by the shuffle of a man who'd had the certainty beaten out of him by circumstances. Dale looked at the truck, then at the driver. His face went pale. Hollister. Dale. They stared at each other. The gas pump clicked in the silence. I heard you bought Henderson's, Dale said finally. Guess you did all right for yourself. Guess I did. Guess you're here to gloat, tell me how you won and I lost, rub my face in it. Ray was quiet for a moment. He'd thought about this conversation for years, imagined it 100 different ways. In some versions he was angry, in others he was cold and triumphant. In a few he was the bigger man showing mercy. What he felt now, looking at Dale Vincent's defeated face, was none of those things. What he felt was tired. I'm not here to gloat, Ray said. I'm here to offer you a job. Dale's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, suspicion, anger, and finally something that might have been hope quickly suppressed. A job doing what? I'm rebuilding the service department. I need experienced mechanics. You were a good mechanic once before you went into management. Ray met Dale's eyes. You could be one again. You'd hire me after what I did. What you did got me fired from a job. It didn't stop me from building a career. Ray paused. I'm not offering you your old role. I'm not making you a manager. I'm offering you a position in the service bay, working under Eddie Cruz, turning wrenches like you did 20 years ago. Same pay as any other mechanic. No special treatment. Dale was silent. Ray could see him thinking, weighing pride against circumstances, past against present. Why? Dale finally asked. After everything I did, why would you help me? Because you were right about one thing. Word travels fast in this industry. Everyone knows what you did, what you tried to make me do, and what happened afterward. You've been blacklisted the same way you blacklisted me. The difference is that what they're saying about you is true. Dale flinched. But here's the other thing. I've spent 7 years building a business on second chances. Every mechanic I've hired is someone the other shops threw away. Eddie Cruz fired for asking too many questions about billing. Marcus Webb fired for telling a customer he was being overcharged. Tommy Reese, yeah, I hired Tommy, the kid who told Walter Pearson what happened, fired for disloyalty. Ray smiled slightly. Turns out the people nobody else wants are sometimes the best people to have. And you think I'm one of those people? I think you made a bad choice 7 years ago, maybe more than one bad choice. I think you were working for bad people who wanted you to do bad things and you went along with it because that was easier than standing up. I think you've been paying for those choices ever since. Ray reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, the new design, the new name. Monday morning, 7 o'clock, show up sober and ready to work, we'll see how it goes. He held out the card. Dale looked at it for a long moment, then he took it. Why are you really doing this? Ray thought about it. Because my father taught me there are two kinds of mechanics, the kind who fix things and the kind who make things look fixed. I'm trying to be the first kind. That means fixing things, even things that are harder to fix than engines. He paid for his gas, got back in his truck and drove away. In the rearview mirror, he could see Dale standing by the pump, staring at the business card in his hand. Let me tell you about the next 6 years. Because that is how long Dale Vincent worked at Hollister Farm Equipment before Ray had to make another decision about him. Dale showed up on Monday morning, sober and ready to work. Ray put him in the service bay under Eddie Cruz, turning wrenches the way he hadn't done in 15 years. It was hard for him, hard on his pride, hard on his hands, hard on his back. But he showed up every day. The other mechanics didn't trust him at first. They knew the story. They knew what Dale had done to Ray, what he'd tried to do to Walter Pearson, what kind of manager he'd been. They watched him carefully, waiting for him to slip back into old habits. Dale didn't slip. He came in early, stayed late, did the work without complaining. He didn't cut corners, he didn't pad invoices. He fixed tractors the way they were supposed to be fixed, charged fair prices, and kept his head down. By the end of the first year, the other mechanics had started to accept him. By the end of the second year, they'd started to respect him. By the end of the third year, Eddie Cruz was asking Ray if Dale could be promoted to senior mechanic. What do you think? Ray asked. I think he's good at his job. I think he's learned from his mistakes. I think people can change if they want to badly enough. Eddie paused. I also think you already knew that when you hired him. Ray promoted Dale to senior mechanic, then to service lead. By 1988, Dale Vincent was effectively running the service department not as a manager but as the most experienced mechanic on the floor, the one the others came to with questions they couldn't answer. He never tried to sabotage another tractor. He never cheated another farmer. He never gave an order he wouldn't have followed himself. Some people said he was a different man. Ray knew the truth. He was the same man making different choices. The same skills, the same knowledge, the same personality, just pointed in a different direction. That is what second chances are for. Let me tell you about the VFW Hall, because that is where this story reaches its conclusion. In 1992, the Fairbury Chamber of Commerce held its annual awards dinner. Ray Hollister was receiving the Business Leader of the Year award recognition for what he had built over 17 years. From a fired mechanic to the owner of the most successful equipment dealership in southeast Nebraska. The room was full of farmers, business owners, local officials. Walter Pearson was there, older now but still sharp, sitting at a front table with his son Jim. Tommy Reese was there, now the service manager at a co-op in Hebron, doing good work for honest pay. Eddie Cruz was there, soon to be promoted to general manager. And Dale Vincent was there, sitting in the back, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit anymore, watching as Ray walked to the podium. Ray gave a short speech. He'd never been comfortable with public speaking. He thanked his customers, his employees, his family. Then, just before he sat down, he said something that wasn't in his prepared remarks. One more thing, 17 years ago I was fired from a job for refusing to do something dishonest. At the time I thought my career was over. I was wrong. It was just beginning, but I didn't build this business alone. I built it with people who believed in second chances, farmers who gave me work when no one else would, employees who trusted me to lead them. Even people who'd made mistakes and wanted a chance to make things right. He paused. One of those people is here tonight. He was my boss once, a long time ago. He made choices I disagreed with and I paid the price for standing up against those choices. But later, when his life fell apart, I offered him a job, not because I'd forgotten what he did, because I believed people could change. Ray looked toward the back of the room. Dale Vincent has worked for me for 10 years now. He's become one of the best mechanics I've ever known. Not because he changed who he was, but because he changed what he chose to do with who he was. That's what this award really represents, not my success, our success. The success of everyone who decided that doing the right thing matters even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Thank you, Dale, for proving me right. The room was silent for a moment. Then Walter Pearson stood up and started clapping. Jim Pearson joined him, then Eddie Cruz, then Tommy Reese. Then the whole room, everyone on their feet, applauding not just Ray Hollister but something bigger, the idea that integrity matters, that second chances work, that people can change if they are willing to do the hard work of changing. Dale Vincent sat in the back of the VFW hall with tears streaming down his face, clapping harder than anyone. Ray Hollister sold the dealership in 2005 when he was 66 years old. He sold it to Eddie Cruz, who had been running it for years anyway. The price was fair. The terms were generous. The name stayed the same, Hollister Farm Equipment. Dale Vincent retired 3 years earlier at 69. He spent his final years doing what he had always been good at: fixing tractors, solving problems, getting his hands dirty. He died in 2010 in his sleep, and his obituary mentioned his 23 years at Hollister Farm Equipment without mentioning anything that had come before. Ray spoke at the funeral. He didn't say much. Ray had never been one for long speeches, but what he said was this: Dale Vincent made mistakes, so have I, so has everyone in this room. The difference isn't whether you make mistakes, it's what you do after. Dale spent the last 23 years of his life doing good work for fair pay, helping farmers keep their equipment running, earning back a reputation he'd thrown away. That's not nothing, that's everything. Ray Hollister is still alive as of this recording. He is 93 years old, living in the same house he bought in 1983, surrounded by photographs of family and friends and the business he built from nothing. On his wall there is a framed check for $500. The check Walter Pearson gave him in November of 1975. It has never been cashed, it never will be. Next to the check is a photograph from 1992, Ray at the VFW hall holding his award, Dale Vincent visible in the back of the room clapping. Below the photograph is a small plaque with 3 words: integrity, patience, redemption. Those are the words Ray Hollister built his life on. Those are the words he taught everyone who worked for him. Those are the words that turned a fired mechanic into a business leader and a disgraced manager into an honest man. The John Deere dealer fired him for refusing one order. 10 years later, Ray Hollister owned the dealership. 10 years after that, the man who fired him was working for him. Not as punishment but as proof. Proof that doing the right thing matters, proof that second chances work, proof that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming the person you were always supposed to be.